Hello and welcome to Castar Reviews. We have a very special edition of Castar Reviews today, considering that we're looking at two games in one video. The inclusion of Bayonetta at the end of the Devil May Cry retrospective is actually more fitting than you think. The similarities are evident when you take a look at the game, but there are other reasons why these two games are considered successors to Devil May Cry. Have you ever heard of Platinum Games? They're responsible for over-the-top action games like Metal Gear Rising, Vanquish, and The Wonderful 101. The studio was founded by a group led by high-profile former Capcom employees, including Shinji Mikami and Hideki Kamiya. In 2007, Kamiya would head a group known as Team Little Angels, a reference to the team responsible for DMC1, and got to work on Bayonetta. The first game was released on Xbox 360 and PS3 to great reviews, although there were some issues with the PS3 version that makes the 360 version a better choice. I'll let Nick talk more about the sequel and future ports when we get to Bayonetta 2. So without further ado, here's the plot. Our story begins at a funeral, but we don't know who's dead yet. There's a nun undertaking the ceremony and a Joe Pesci lookalike named Enzo talking shit about the deceased. Then the heavens open up and angels descend from on high. But these aren't your daddy's angels, because they're here to kill. The nun takes off her gown and reveals herself to be Bayonetta, and then the casket opens up to reveal Rodin, a demonic weapons dealer / bartender. As they fight off the angels, a mysterious woman in red assists Bayonetta, and she apparently looks familiar to her. Bayonetta and Enzo drive back to the gates of hell, Rodin's bar, and they discuss their next course of action, which leads to the European town of Vigrid. The whole point of this so far is to track down the Eyes of the World, which are gemstones with the power to alter time and space. Bayonetta was found at the bottom of a lake 20 years before the start of this game with no memory of her past, so she thinks that the eyes can restore her memory. Rodin gives Bayonetta a new set of guns as a gift, named Scarborough Fair. I wonder if it's named after the Simon Garfunkel song. While in Vigrid, Bayonetta has a few flashbacks to her past, and then meets up with the woman in red, whose name is Jean. She also runs into Luca, who is a journalist that holds Bayonetta responsible for killing his father. Luca's dad was the one that found Bayonetta at the bottom of the lake 20 years ago. As she goes along fighting angels and gigantic monstrosities, Bayonetta also runs into a little girl named Cereza.
Will you quit calling me Mummy? If there's two things I hate in this world, it's cockroaches and crying babies. Well, a crying baby cockroach would be truly terrible. So don't you dare cry.
Yes, Mommy.
Cereza starts to follow Bayonetta around, and Bayonetta gives her a ribbon of her hair to keep her watch safe. The intervening moments of the plot are used to fight titanic bosses known as the Cardinal Virtues. After riding on a missile to the Isle of the Soul, Bayonetta encounters Jean one more time, and Jean finally spills the beans.
That gem brings back so many memories.
Why the left eye, our treasured left eye, will never fall into the hands of another. I will not stand for the wild ambition of a treacherous Lumen sage who disrupted our age-old balance. Your path ends here. Do not fear your fate. Stand, Cereza.
In the innocence of our childhood, we used to play together as friends. But as time passed, perhaps even my eyes were clouded with fear.
After leaving Jean, Bayonetta climbs the Ithaval Tower and confronts Balder, the Lumen Sage responsible for setting the plot in motion. Balder is actually Bayonetta's father, and Cereza is actually Bayonetta from another timeline. Balder's scheme was to bring in Cereza so he can jog Bayonetta's memory. In a massive exposition dump, Balder reveals that the eyes aren't actually gemstones, but people. He's the right eye and Bayonetta the left. He intends to use the Eyes of the World to awaken Jubileus, basically God, and recreate the universe in his image. Bayonetta defeats Balder, with lipstick no less, and returns Cereza to her original timeline. But when she comes back, she collapses in pain and Balder uses her to awaken Jubileus. Jean saves her in the nick of time, and Bayonetta begins to fight Jubileus. Jubileus is then launched into the sun, but then in a post-credits twist, Jubileus still has a bit of fight left. After the Umbran Witches deal the final blow to Jubileus, the game ends for real this time. Bayonetta's story is certainly interesting, but I feel that it's wasted as a result of the character action genre. It's competent for sure, but people, including myself, are not playing these games for the story. Also, while the story is basic in its structure, the game sometimes forgets to tell you about what's going on. For example, you have these flashbacks at certain points in the game where you either fight Jean or team up with the Umbran Witches against one of the cardinal virtues. It just happens in the middle of the level, and nobody even talks about it until the exposition dump at the end of the game. Speaking of, it's weird that they had to vomit all of that exposition in the last 2 missions of the game. Father Baldur takes what feels like an hour to detail his scheme, and for a game that prides itself on fast-paced action, it grinds the climax to a screeching halt. Couldn't Jean have told Bayonetta about at least some of this stuff beforehand? My last complaint is that there really isn't much development for Enzo and Rodin. I would have loved to know how Bayonetta met these two and started working for them. At least for Rodin you have a hint about who he might be, but for Enzo you get nothing. Halfway through the game they basically disappear until the ending. After you meet Luca, the only time you get to talk to Rodin is when you visit the Gates of Hell during a chapter. In short, if you're in it for the story, I would look elsewhere. It's a framework for the events that take place, but it shouldn't be the reason you pick up Bayonetta. As a matter of fact, one of the main reasons you should pick up Bayonetta is the presentation. For a game that was released in 2009, it looks gorgeous. The environments all have a personality to them, and each chapter feels different even though they might be in the same area. One major element of this game that may cause some controversy is fanservice. Bayonetta herself is certainly more sexually open than Dante, but I don't think the game objectifies her one bit. She is a deep enough character who does undergo some growth throughout the plot. While it may be a turnoff for some, I think that Bayonetta is just using her sexuality to express herself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Also, since Bayonetta's clothes are made from her hair, it makes sense that she has to get a bit naked to summon hair demons. Speaking of that, in case you couldn't tell, this game is over the top and extravagant, starting with the massive boss fights where Bayonetta lets down her hair for a power-up. All of the bosses are defeated in ridiculous ways, like when you play volleyball with a golem, or crush one of the cardinal virtues into a ball. Bayonetta gets that games are supposed to be fun, and has fun with itself as well as the player. I'm also a big fan of the sound design. The sound effects are amazing, and the soundtrack is really catchy. When I first heard the remix Fly Me to the Moon, I thought it was going to sound weird and out of place, but listening to it now, it's one of my favorite songs in the OST. My other favorite song in the OST is Mysterious Destiny, the main battle theme, which fits perfectly for the combat. The voice acting is stellar, with not a single bad performance. My favorite performances are from Taylor, Yuri Lowenthal as Luca, and Dave Fennoy as Rodin. The presentation is definitely not the only aspect worthy of praise though. There's also being a spiritual successor to Devil May Cry, Bayonetta's gameplay is very similar, but there are some changes, some good and some not as good. There's a separate dodge button which I loved in DMC Devil May Cry and still love here. The dodge button also comes with a twist, Witch Time. Witch Time is one of the unique selling points of Bayonetta. If you dodge an attack within a certain window, time slows down and you can inflict massive damage on whatever angel stands in your way. This rewards expert play and good timing. It's practically a necessity for some parts of the game, like light puzzle solving. So if you're having trouble with Witch Time, you can practice at the puzzles that require Witch Time to solve. Along with Witch Time, Bayonetta also has a variety of weapons that can be attached to her hands and feet. The Y button is used for punches, but the B button is used for kicks. X is used to fire guns regardless of whatever weapon you're holding. If you fill up your magic meter, you can execute a torture attack by pressing punch and kick. These attacks deal a ton of quick damage and require a fuck ton of mashing. While the weapon system is deep, I do have a slight problem with how they're equipped. You get 2 presets for a hands and feet weapon combination, and they can be switched on the fly. My problem here is that there should have been more presets. With how many weapons you can acquire throughout the game, you should have been able to make at least as many to equip every weapon at least once. One thing I really hate about this game is the quick time events. In my opinion, most of what happens during these could have just been a cutscene. Also, they're unnecessarily punishing. If you fail one of them, then the game treats it like you died, which ends up hurting you at the results screen. It would have been slightly less annoying if the game just chopped off a bit of health, but I think this is frankly a cruel and unusual punishment. The level structure for Bayonetta is as follows. Each chapter is broken up into a multitude of verses. The verses are treated as closed-off arena fights, and you're graded after each one. Each medal goes from pure platinum, the highest, to stone, the lowest. After each chapter, your verse grades are compiled together with how fast you completed the level and how much damage you took for a final grade. Aside from the verses that are necessary for story progression, there's also optional verses and Alfheim portals. Alfheims are the equivalent to secret missions, where you fight enemies with stipulations like you can only deal damage in Witch Time, or executing a certain number of torture attacks. After beating each Alfheim, you're rewarded with either a health upgrade or a magic upgrade. Yet another fun part about Bayonetta is a bonus game that you play at the end of each chapter, Angel Attack. You shoot angels with a set amount of bullets, and you gain halos based on how many points you score. You can use these halos to buy items at the Gates of Hell. It's fitting that this game was published by Sega, since the halos look almost exactly like the rings from Sonic. You're not going to be getting all these items in the shop on your first run though, so you'll probably have to go through the campaign multiple times, killing enemies to gain a boatload of halos. I have no problem with that, since the gameplay is such a blast. The last thing I want to talk about is the difficulty. In short, Bayonetta starts out like an easy walk in the park, but it gets hard real quick. Some of the later bosses, Jubileus especially, can have as many as 5 health bars, and that's just on normal difficulty. Luckily, there is a checkpoint system and items that restore your health and magic in a pinch, but be forewarned, the harder difficulties don't fuck around. Every enemy has larger health bars, and even the Alpine portals are harder. Try hard and infinite climax at your own peril. While Bayonetta was a critical success, Sega wasn't too interested in greenlighting a sequel, so Platinum Games had to reach out to another publisher for help. For more on that, my friend Nick Kumis is going to take a look at Bayonetta 2.
Thank you, Adam. The first game did exceptionally well from both fans and critics alike, but didn't sell too well to become a hit series in the eyes of Sega. So before they could shelve this game forever, Nintendo swooped in to save the franchise with additional funding for Platinum Games to begin work on its sequel, Bayonetta 2. This makes sense since both parties collaborate on projects such as Mad World, Wonderful 101 as previously mentioned, and Star Fox Zero. Ouch. Anyway, this partnership was even partly responsible for Bayonetta's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. After winning the 2015 official Smash Ballot, Bayonetta was added to the game along with plenty of her catchy songs, flashy moves, and her very own stage, the Umbra Clock Tower. Originally released back in 2014, Bayonetta 2 was originally a Nintendo Wii U exclusive. However, with the third installment on the horizon, Switch owners can now play both the original game and its sequel in one package, which I will be playing on today. So before I become a rambling historian, let's get right into the plot of Bayonetta 2.
Tomorrow's mine. You awoke me, unleashed the fire in my heart. I will dance and I'll defeat them through the light and the dark.
Shortly after Bayonetta's fight with Father Baldur and Jubileus, Baldur has perished as the last of the Lumen Sages, along with a mysterious entity attempting to escape his body. A few months later, it's now Christmas time! Bayonetta is Christmas shopping with Enzo when angels suddenly attack the city during a stunt plane flyover. In the span of 15 minutes, we are reintroduced to many of the main cast members from the first game. Enzo, Jean, and even Rodin, who's hilariously in a Santa outfit, might I add.
Right on time to deliver a little holiday cheer.
Teaming up with Jean from the first game, they're on the verge of winning until a demon summoning goes wrong. Despite Bayonetta being able to put down the demon, Jean is attacked, causing the depths of Inferno to claim her soul. At the same time, it's revealed that a new masked Lumen Sage is brought to the present day by a mysterious figure who promises him a chance for revenge. Upon receiving a tip from her informant Ienzo, Bayonetta heads to the sacred mountain of Thimblebender, located in the fictional city of Noaton. It is said there's an entrance to Inferno, the real gates of hell, at the mountain, and Bayonetta plans to use it to save her friend. Upon arriving in Noaton, Bayonetta meets a boy called Loki, who is trying to reach Thimblebender for reasons he can't remember.
You can see me.
You're putting on quite a show, little magician.
Oh, you like that, huh? Wait till you see the climax. Silly girl.
Both he and Bayonetta strike a deal to travel up the mountain together in order to reach Inferno. Along the way, we're introduced to Luca from the first game.
Fleur de la Reine, Maid of Nerine, also known as diamond lilies, I think. The name Nerine is derived from the Nereids, or sea nymphs. Quite appropriate for this city.
Luca?
Will you quit calling me that? I'm not a pet, or a cat! Oh wait, you said Luca. Not used to that. How are you, Bayonetta?
With some help from Luca over the course of the game, Luca's lost memories start resurfacing, but the journey suffers setbacks from angel and demon attacks alike. And soon Loki is hunted by the masked Lumen Sage, along with a mysterious prophet who apparently knows Loki. The prophet also shows Bayonetta a vision of the past that implies that the witch hunts 500 years ago were not truly caused by Balder. After narrowly escaping their aggressors, Bayonetta reaches Inferno and travels into its depths to save Jean's soul. With the help of Rodan, Bayonetta is able to revive Jean's soul back to the human world.
Jean, get up. You're going to be late. Jean, it's time. Get up! Please, Jean! Wake up! Jean!
Cereza.
What do you need? A wake-up kiss or something?
However, the masked sage attacks again, and finally reveals himself to be a younger Balder who has been trying to hunt down Loki as a part of his revenge. Even though she's able to save the boy from Balder's attacks, Loki suddenly loses control of his power and sweeps both Bayonetta and Balder into a time rift that sends them 500 years into the past. Now in Vigrid, during the witch hunts, Bayonetta meets her mother Rosa, and the two witches work together to fight back against the onslaught of angels. Eventually, Bayonetta encounters Loptyr, a doppelganger of Loki, and the one who eventually becomes the prophet in present day. Loptyr claims that the eyes of the world, one of which is Bayonetta's, belongs to him. Later meeting with the young Balder, Bayonetta arrives too late to stop Loptyr from murdering Rosa. Bayonetta realizes that Loptyr is the one that Balder should really be after instead of Loki, and that Loptyr has brought the sage back to the present to use as a pawn. The two of them decide to work together and return to the present to stop Loptyr's plans. Meanwhile, in present day, Luca encounters Loki, having now escaped from Inferno. Claiming that he now remembers everything, Loki pleads Loki to take him up to Fimbulbender. With the assistance of a revived Jean, Bayonetta and Balder make their way up to the top of Fimbulbender and encounter Loptyr having already captured Loki. Loptyr explains that he and Loki were once the god of chaos, the true creator of the eyes of the world. Aesir has split his power amongst humanity to create the eyes, but had also split his very soul into two halves of good and evil in the process. Loki, the good half, was given the power to control the eyes directly, and Loptyr promptly takes that power for his own. Despite their efforts, Loptyr takes both the eyes from Balder and Bayonetta and transforms himself into Aesir, with the intent to rule over humanity as their god. As the final clash takes place, Loki remembers that Aesir's true power is to erase anything that he wants from the world. He uses that power to destroy the eyes, weakening Loptyr and making easy fodder for a combined summoning Bayonetta, Balder, and Jean to perform moments later. Loptyr, with his body destroyed and only his soul remaining, attempts to escape to another time, but Balder stops him and absorbs his evil soul, despite the warnings from Loki that doing so will eventually poison his very core. Balder reveals that he knows that Bayonetta is his daughter, and asks her to stop him should Loptyr's evil lead him astray.
Balder!
Cereza, listen to me.
You know my name?
If I stray from my path, you must be the one. The one to stop me.
Balder!
Cereza, just one time. Call me Daddy.
Daddy.
Thank you, Cereza, my dear, sweet child.
With Loptir and the eyes gone, Loki says that he plans to take a break from the world's affairs, but that he and Bayonetta may meet again in the future. He wishes her goodbye, and then fades away. A few days have passed since the events of Thimblebender. Bayonetta and Jean are taking advantage of the post-holiday sales, while watching with amusement at Luca being roped into advertising Rodon's bar. Back in that Santa outfit, I might say. Bayonetta suddenly remembers that she forgot Ienzo, and then promptly sees him crashing down the street in a plane with angels in pursuit. Despite her annoyance of ruining another dress, Bayonetta teams up with Jean to take to battle once again. In the post-credit scene, Baldur is shown returning to his time period, now corrupted by the evil Loptir's soul. Donning his golden mask, he begins his plot to reunite the three realms, setting up the events of the first Bayonetta. A quick little side note here. My only gripe with this scene is there's a bit of a plot hole. How did Baldur have his right eye in the first game, but lost it here? This is a minor nitpick, but it doesn't really affect my overall experience with the game. Anyhow, Bayonetta 2's story continues that intriguing divine comedy from the first game. However, unlike Adam though, I very much like the story of these games, even if most just play them for the hack and slash action. The fact it kind of begins as a rescue mission for Jean, and it is one for the majority of the game, kind of feels less grand than the first. While there are some revelations in regards to the first game and the war 500 years ago, the basic story structure doesn't make it any more action-packed until near the last third. There are also some story inconsistencies, like the one I mentioned before. Like Bayonetta almost forgetting about Jean because she's so focused on helping Loki for the first half of the game. It's not until the angels and demons knock them down enough then she actually goes to break into Inferno to save her. Also, the surprise of who the Lumen Sage wasn't much of a surprise to me, as I almost had an idea of who it was the whole time from the start. And again, still no love for our boys Ienzo and Rodon, as they didn't get much development here as they did in the first game. Even Luca was more or less here to be a support character this time around. At least Aesir didn't take a million years to explain himself like Father Baldur did. In short, the story is a bit more complex in its framework than before, but in its entirety, there's much more to play Bayonetta 2 than its story. I'll say it right now. The presentation in Bayonetta 2 is just as fantastic and even more than Bayonetta 1. While the first game from 2009 looks gorgeous, Bayonetta 2 blows it out of the water with how much more colorful the areas are, and in turn how much they pop out. The wonderful personality to each of these new environments we traverse continues to shine through in this sequel, and each chapter's unique feel as you progress through almost has you forget that you're in the same area. Heck, even enemies and bosses can drastically shift how an area is structured, which spices up what happens next. If kicking the crap out of angels while on a high-speed fighter jet isn't insane, I don't know what is. At this point in the franchise, we can't deny fan service is given in the world of Bayonetta. With knowing who she is and what her purpose in life is, Bayonetta just wants to have fun kicking angel butt. So using her sexuality to express herself is nothing to find wrong about. I mean, it's a better reason for her to have her entire clothing be made of her hair for summoning literal demons by her side than Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5, who's just half naked because she needs to breathe. Regarding all that though, just like its predecessor, Bayonetta 2 continues the over-the-top kooky action extravagance while amplifying them up to an 11. Not only fighting angels in ridiculous, hilarious ways, but now demons as well. While the angels are more elegant in their appearance and abilities, creepy faces and all, the demons are disgusting, rigid, and mechanical in how they attack and move towards you. Bayonetta even has some new moves from the last game. Replacing the torture attacks, when her magic meter is filled, she can now access Umbran Climax, which supercharges her moves for a sequence of more devastating, powerful, and even more ridiculous attacks against regular enemies and bosses. Bayonetta 2 understands that games are supposed to be fun, and continues that through its tone and not-so-serious attitude when it plays with itself as well as the player. Even this game evolves the amazing sound design from the first game. The sound effects sound hard and punchy, with every smack, whack, pummel, and twirl Bayonetta does against her enemies. And the soundtrack is even catchier as ever, continuing its theme of reinvigorating these old jazz songs with remixing Jerry Butler's Moon River, and with such a style Bayonetta goes for, doesn't sound as strange as you think. It's such a popping tune alongside the game's main battle theme, Tomorrow Is Mine. I can listen to these tracks for hours and just move my body to the groove without end. I love these tracks, and in gameplay they nicely bring me into the fight with Bayonetta and allows me to feel every move she makes with every button press. The voice acting is as remarkable as it ever was. Everyone's here to reprise their roles. Helena Taylor as Bayonetta, Grey Distill Griffin as Jean, Yuri Lowenthal as Luca, and Dave Fennoy as Rodin. Sadly, Jean Cassier replaces Chick Venera as Ienzo, but when booting up the game for the first time, I had no idea. He's just that good. And so is everyone else. Hearing Rodin's suave quips as a good old demonic bartender is great. Luca's attempts to be a stereotypical heroic journalist, but comedically is not taken seriously, is phenomenal. And Ienzo always getting the shit end of the stick is just hilarious. Bayonetta 2 even adds some new characters to the fray, such as Mark Daughtry as Loki, Crispin Freeman as Young Balder, and TJ Ramini as Loptir, who all do a wonderful performance as well. The presentation may be one area that Bayonetta 2 excels at, but we can't forget Bayonetta 2's gameplay continues that fast-paced, hack-and-slash ridiculous fun action as the first game. Bayonetta has a wide variety of weapons that can be attached to her hands and feet. For the Nintendo Switch version, the X button is used for punches and the A button is used for kicks. The Y is used for firing guns regardless of whatever weapons you're holding. You can even perform a perfect dodge, which will result in witch time to slow time down to punish your enemies more. As before, you can fill up your magic meter to execute an Umbran Climax, dealing an extraordinary amount of damage along with very flashy attacks for a stylish combo. Besides the hack-and-slash combat, witch time puzzles from Bayonetta 1 also return, in order to slow time down to walk across water and platforms. There's even a frickin' on-rails jet shooter section towards Fimblebender, while you shoot and slash angels and demons out of the sky. Pretty awesome to my book. In order to progress and execute many more flashy combos, you visit Rodin's bar, the Gates of Hell, and purchase many new weapons for hard-hitting action and combo starters, techniques for more mobility, items in form of lollipops for health, magic increase, armor increase, and Rodin's treasures for unlocking many unique costumes Bayonetta could wear. In Bayonetta 2, if you have specific Nintendo amiibo, you can even wear Princess Peach's and Daisy's dress from Super Mario, Link's clothes from The Legend of Zelda, and Samus's armor from Metroid. While the weapon system in both games is deep, allowing you to equip and all weapon types, you still can't switch more than 2 presets on the fly. This is pretty sad because as a sequel to an amazing game already, allowing 3 or even 4 to be switched at once would have been pretty nice as a feature to incorporate multiple weapon varieties and styles. However, with an abundance of weapons that you can acquire throughout the game, you should have been able to make at least as many to equip every weapon at once. A great improvement has been to the QuickTime events. Almost none of them put me in a situation where I felt like if I missed one imprecise button press, I would die for it. Thankfully, there's few and far between as they're only designated to bosses and very certain level sections. Speaking of which, the level structure in Bayonetta 2 feels much more opened up in its level layout as you can follow the linear path before you, or opt to go off the beaten path and find collectibles or fights that can better improve your grade at the end of each one. The medal follows the same ranking system as before. Number of combos, time to complete, and damage taken per battle, going from pure platinum being the highest to stone being the lowest. You can even find portals to Muspelheim, a place where you can perform hidden challenges such as performing timed battles, combos in a skill go, take no damage, or don't even touch the ground. In turn, you're rewarded with either a health upgrade or a magic upgrade. These challenges also replace the Alfheim from the first game. Unfortunately, in Bayonetta 2, there's no angel attack bonus game after each chapter, which is sad.
As spiritual successors to the Devil May Cry series, Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 succeed exceptionally. Thank goodness that Nintendo was able to save this franchise and help it become the best game series on Platinum's resume. Once again, I want to thank Nick for helping me out and taking a look at Bayonetta 2. Since next month is October, I'm going to spend it covering one of my favorite horror series. Thank you for watching this episode of Castar Reviews, subscribe for more content from me, and follow me on Twitter for production updates. See you next week.